We are entering the age of phantasmagoria. It is an era in which humanity, due to technology, cannot distinguish between what is real and what is false, and that promotes the manipulation of the human being. A prominent example of manipulation which does not allow us to know what is real and what is unreal can be found in the case of Apollo 11. It also applies to many other topics, such as UFOs, the origin of human beings, current events, etc. Manipulation is at all levels: political, social, and religious. The term phantasmagoria was mentioned by Billy Meier in 1958, when he was 21 years old, in his warnings sent to the governments of Europe. Interestingly, he talks about the internet when it had not yet been invented, or of future events such as the displacement of many people to higher grounds. As scientists have already predicted, that will happen because of rising ocean levels and other future events. Here he mentions phantasmagoria, which will already exist during the crisis. Phantasmagoria is the phenomenon by which we cannot distinguish what is real or unreal. The phantasmagoria is already here, as we see its effects in our society today. Phantasmagoria is spreading due to current technology, such as the internet and electronic tools. Images are manipulated with Photoshop. Now, with artificial intelligence tools, immediate and very realistic effects are produced. CGI technology is now available to everyone, and it is no longer something complicated that Hollywood studios use. We are concerned that machines are becoming intelligent, but we should be more concerned about intelligent people becoming machines. And we see the symptoms of phantasmagoria in our society today. There is a lot of misinformation at every level. Fake news abounds. Conspiracy theories are a favorite place to manipulate people. Some of them have a solid basis, indicating that there was some hoax. However, as soon as these theories emerge, they are manipulated with disinformation, obscuring the truth. A typical case of such theories that the people have blurred is that of Apollo 11. Other conspiracy theories are absurd and are a social experiment to know what percentage of the world's population can be manipulated. Such is the case of the Flat Earth theory, which shows that between 15 and 20% of humanity can be convinced of something totally absurd. Today's big problem is that many people, mainly the younger generations, base their knowledge on what they see in social networks rather than observing nature. I will show an obvious example of manipulation I have studied in detail. This is the case with the Apollo 11 mission. This photo was manipulated with Photoshop. NASA did not publish all Apollo 11 photos in 1969. Many were published recently and some were edited. This photo is an example of a fake photo. The sunlight illuminates Aldrin from his front. Armstrong took this photo towards the south, and the sun is in the east. The shadow of the helmet cast on his backpack should be much broader, covering almost the entire surface of the backpack. This photo was edited using another similar fake photo where Aldrin salutes the US flag taken in a recording studio. Billy Meier, in several contact notes, refers to the Apollo missions. His Plejaren friends told him that the Apollo 11 mission did not land on the moon. They made all of mankind believe that it did. They broadcasted the moonwalk live. NASA presented photos and brought back samples of moon rocks, but that was false. And it also tells us that the Apollo 13 mission did not have damage that aborted the trip. Apollo 13, in a quick mission, got to the moon and installed all the equipment that Apollo 11 had not installed. There was a lot of risk in landing Apollo 11. At that time, the accuracy of descent was more than 7 kilometers. Then, the spacecraft could get to some place where it was complicated to descend the spaceship, and the lunar module could crash or capsize. For this reason, someone with a lot of influence and decision, perhaps President Richard Nixon, ordered a simulation of the landing. NASA was not yet ready to execute a successful landing on the moon. The hoax was conducted by a small group of less than 40 people. It was not NASA as an institution, but a small group within NASA, including Wernher von Braun and his assistant. Based on photos taken by an earlier mission, Apollo 10, NASA made an acceptable replica of a place on the lunar surface they chose. They most likely did it in a desert, where they took pictures and videos at night. At first, the astronauts used this recording studio for training purposes without knowing its real purpose. When making the trip, the astronauts had to have boarded the rocket that took them to the moon. Making a fictitious transmission of the moonwalk from somewhere on Earth would have been impossible, as many antennas worldwide would have had to receive the signal, and that would have required involving many more people in the hoax. These astronauts followed the same routine as the Apollo 10 trip, which NASA had already executed successfully and had a shallow risk. They did not land on the moon. Then, at some point, they began transmitting from their spacecraft orbiting the moon, a previous recording made in the recording studio. The astronauts' voices should have been transmitted live, as they were to interact with the operators in the control center in Houston, and even talk to the President of the United States. Armstrong's famous phrase, "That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind," was said when he was in the spacecraft orbiting the moon, not on its surface. After the return, the astronauts were quarantined. Billy tells us that they were hypnotized and implanted with false memories. Scientific studies have shown that false memories can be implanted in people's minds under hypnosis. It was easy for them, as he had already practiced the whole moonwalk routine in the recording studio many times. It was easy to mistake them for actual events. Upon return, NASA published fake photos, supposedly taken on the lunar surface. Still, in reality, they were taken in the recording studio. In my book, I describe the evidence that leads to that conclusion. NASA made technological changes to the Apollo missions after Apollo 11. Those changes would allow a spacecraft to land accurately at a pre-selected site. Apollo 12 landed on the edge of a crater, not far from the Surveyor 3 probe. This was the first Apollo mission to put men on the lunar surface. NASA was now confident that it could land a spacecraft very accurately. NASA knew that in the future, there would be very powerful telescopes and other missions to the moon from different countries that would discover that nothing was installed at the Apollo 11 landing site. Apollo 13 would install the Apollo 11 equipment. To do that, they loaded the rocket with more fuel than necessary, as NASA records show. That would allow them to get the spacecraft in 2 days or less to the Sea of Tranquility just when the sun had the desired elevation. There was a quiet period of more than 5 hours in the mission, where the astronauts were supposedly sleeping. But they were descending to the moon, where they installed the Apollo 11 equipment in the Sea of Tranquility. On their return, they faked the damage. To do so, they disconnected the spacecraft's transmission system for a few seconds. They emptied one of the spacecraft's oxygen tanks. After recovering communications, they reported that they had heard an explosion, which, in fact, did not occur. The technicians on the ground, the astronauts' wives, and all the people involved in the Apollo 13 mission thought the astronauts were on their way to the moon, but they were on their way back. When they returned to Earth after a few days, they undocked the capsule and made a remote detonation in the service module. To have done the explosion earlier would have been too risky. They took 22 pictures of the damaged module. In these photos, we notice the spacecraft rotating on two axes. The spacecraft should rotate only on its longitudinal axis to avoid overheating due to solar radiation. But since the explosion had just happened, the spacecraft was spinning out of control. They returned safely, fulfilling their secret mission. Recent spacecraft from India and NASA, such as the Lunar Reconnaissance Probe, have taken pictures of the Moon, including the landing sites of the Apollo missions. Logically, we can see the Apollo 11 landing site. We can see the base of the lunar module and the equipment that Apollo 13 installed. It is interesting to compare these photos with the official Apollo 11 photos to realize the differences in the craters. The double crater, which should be double, looks single in the Apollo 11 photos. Here, there should be two small craters that do not exist in the Apollo 11 photos. It is unnatural to find square craters on the Moon like this one. At least I haven't seen any yet. Someone dug this square crater in the desert, in the recording studio, and forgot to make other craters, creating significant differences between the Apollo 11 photos and the recent photos showing what is actually on the Moon. Also, the spacecraft is slightly offset by about 4 to 6 meters. So, how do you hide a lie? By mixing it with real facts. Does this strategy sound familiar? I have shared these findings on social media based on objective evidence. This is not another conspiracy theory, but facts and proofs showing the truth about Apollo 11. I have received passionate reactions from two opposite extremes. They have either mocked my findings or deleted my comments. On the one hand, there is an extreme group with several inflexible or rigid people who will not accept anything that challenges their pre-established beliefs about moon travel. They want to avoid checking the evidence. Their rejection is natural because they have been confronted with conspiracy theories and a lot of unscientific disinformation, so they are closed to hearing anything that challenges their ingrained knowledge. On the other side are the moon hoaxers. There are several sub-levels in this extreme, from those who say that NASA never made it to the moon and that spacecraft can't have landed there on the Apollo missions, up to the absurd extremes of people who think that the Earth is flat, that there is no space travel, or that we live in the Matrix and everything is a lie. It is clear that we are already in the age of phantasmagoria. Mixing lies with truths leads people to one extreme or the other. It is human nature to qualify or disqualify everything as if the world were black or white. Those who go to extremes contribute to keeping the truth hidden, which remains in the middle at a neutral point. How to avoid falling into the phantasmagoria? Observe nature and what it teaches us more than watching TikTok or YouTube videos. Do not create or promote disinformation. Our society rewards those who transmit disinformation. It is common to see many YouTube and TikTok channels posting sensationalist lies that get them many clicks and monetary income for broadcasting lies. Politicians lie, religious leaders lie, the mainstream media lies. Many people prefer to live in lies rather than face reality. Many live in a fairy tale or a horror story when the reality is neither one nor the other. It is recommended to maintain a good balance between being skeptical, questioning everything, and at the same time having an open mind willing to change established beliefs. In general terms, we must be neutral. My new book, The Secret of Apollo 11, details the analysis and findings of the evidence from the Apollo 11 mission. It will be published in June of this year in paperback, hardback, and Kindle format in English, Spanish, and possibly German. I am currently developing a campaign in which you can pre-order the book or make a donation towards its publication. Thank you.